The smell of Mom's roast chicken filled the house as I walked into what I thought would be just another family dinner. 29 years of being Kayla's big sister taught me her, tells the fake smile, the restless tapping of her foot when she was hiding something. But that night something felt off. Wrong. I didn't know it then, but by the time dessert was served, one single notification on my phone would shatter everything I thought I knew about family. About loyalty. About the price of keeping secrets. Dad was telling some story about his fishing trip last weekend, hands moving with the same easy energy he always carried. George Reed's 60s, still sharp, still the calm in every storm. Mom Margaret smiled and laughed at the right moments, but her eyes kept drifting toward the kitchen timer, probably thinking about dessert or the laundry waiting at home. She was 58, warm and gentle, but always worrying about something. Kayla, my 29-year-old sister, picked at her salad, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun. She glanced at her phone every few seconds, screen lighting up with notifications she didn't bother hiding. Her boyfriend Liam sat next to her, talking too loud and laughing at his own jokes, his leg bouncing under the table like he couldn't sit still. Kayla's laugh was forced, too sharp at the edges. Mark, my boyfriend, was across from me, reaching for the bread basket, catching my eye and giving me a small, reassuring smile. He was 34, steady, the kind of man who made you believe things could be simple even if they weren't. I tried to focus on Dad's story, but I caught Kayla stepping out to the porch, phone pressed to her ear. Her voice was sharp, low, like she didn't want anyone to hear, but the words carried anyway through the open window. "No, I told you I'll get it, just give me more time," she hissed. Liam chuckled at something on his phone, showing Mom a video of a dog in a sweater, but I watched Kayla's back, the tightness in her shoulders, the way her fingers trembled around her phone. I sighed and checked my own phone under the table, skimming through emails from the investment firm. I had been waiting for a transfer confirmation for weeks, and it had finally come through. I typed out a quick reply, locked the screen, and set the phone on the table beside my glass. Kayla came back in face, tight eyes darting to my phone like a moth to a flame. She sat down hard, folding her arms across her chest, her jaw working as she stared at the table. "Everything okay?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "Fine," she snapped, not looking at me. Liam looked at her confused, but went back to his phone. Dad cleared his throat, starting another story about how he almost caught the biggest trout of his life, and Mom laughed again, but the sound was thin this time. I felt Mark's hand brush against mine under the table, steady, grounding. I tried to listen, nodding at the right moments, but Kayla's eyes were fixed on my phone, her breathing uneven, lips pressed into a thin line. I felt something tighten in my chest, a flicker of worry I tried to push away. "You're quiet tonight," Mom said to Kayla, trying to keep the mood light. Kayla shrugged, eyes still on the phone. "Just tired," she muttered. Dad kept talking, but I could see Mom's eyes flickering between us, picking up on the tension she didn't know how to fix. Liam leaned back, checking a sports score while Kayla's foot tapped against the leg of the table faster and faster. I reached for my water, trying to calm the growing sense that something was about to snap. I didn't notice Kayla's hand moving until it was too late, her fingers brushing against my phone, pulling it closer to her under the pretense of moving a napkin. For a split second, her eyes widened, the color draining from her face as she read the numbers on the screen. I froze, the room around me humming with the sound of Dad's voice and the clink of silverware, but all I could see was Kayla's hand gripping my phone. $28 million. The number was there, bold, impossible to ignore. Her hand trembled, knuckles whitening as she set the phone back down almost too carefully. Her eyes lifted to mine, wide and glassy, mouth opening then closing again. For a moment she looked like the little sister I used to protect, the one who ran to me when she scraped her knee. But then something shifted, sharp and cold, in the way she looked at me. I stood my chair, scraping lightly against the floor, reaching for the wine bottle on the counter, trying to keep my breathing steady. Behind me, Kayla's breathing quickened, a soft, shaky sound that somehow filled the entire room. I poured the wine slowly, the deep red swirling in the glass, trying to ignore the heat creeping up my neck. I could feel Kayla's eyes on me, burning into my back, and the tightness in my chest returned, heavier this time. I turned back toward the table, glass in hand, just in time to see Kayla's lips part as she drew in a deep, shaking breath. Kayla's lips trembled as she sucked in a sharp breath, eyes wide and fixed on me like she was seeing me for the first time. What is it, Mom asked, glancing at Kayla, confusion pulling at her features. Kayla didn't answer. Her hand shook as she pointed at the phone on the table, her voice breaking when she finally spoke. Emma, she whispered, but it came out like a hiss. What the hell is that on your phone? The room went silent. Dad's hand frozen halfway to his wine glass. Mark looked between us, eyebrows pulling together, the air in the dining room tightening like a rope around my chest. I set the wine glass down too hard, red liquid sloshing over the rim. Kayla, what are you talking about? My voice was calm, but my hands betrayed me, fingers pressing hard into the countertop. Kayla's eyes darted to Mom and Dad before locking back onto me, rage flashing behind the fear. Don't play dumb with me, Emma. $28 million. Where did you get that money? Mom's mouth fell open, her fork clattering against her plate. Dad's face drained of color, eyes sharp as they moved to me, waiting. Mark's voice was low, cautious. Emma, what's going on? I swallowed, trying to steady my breathing, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes pressing into me. My mind raced for the right words, but all I could see was the fear and betrayal growing in Kayla's eyes. It's nothing you need to worry about, I managed, but it was too late. Kayla's laugh was sharp, ugly, echoing in the dining room. Nothing, are you kidding me? She shouted, pushing back her chair so hard it screeched against the hardwood. You're sitting on $28 million while I'm drowning in debt, and you tell me it's nothing. Mom gasped, covering her mouth, tears already welling up. Dad stood, hands out as if to calm Kayla, but she stepped back, clutching her phone to her chest like a weapon. Kayla, please, Dad said, his voice tight. Let's just sit down and talk about this. No, Kayla snapped, shaking her head, violently, tears streaming down her flushed cheeks. She's been lying to us. All this time she's been hiding this from us. Liam shifted in his seat, eyes flicking to Kayla, then to me, then back to Kayla like he was calculating something. His mouth twisted into a smirk, but he said nothing. Mark stood, moving to my side, his hand brushing my arm, but I pulled away, unable to handle the pity in his eyes. I could feel the heat rising in my face, my chest tight, breath shallow. Kayla, this isn't the time, I said, my voice cracking. You don't understand. Then explain it, she screamed, her voice raw, echoing through the house. Explain to me why you've been living like some struggling saint while hoarding millions. Mom sobbed, turning to Dad, who just shook his head, jaw tight, his eyes never leaving me. It's complicated, I whispered, but it was too soft, too weak, and I knew it. Kayla's eyes blazed as she took a step forward. You owe us an explanation, Emma. You owe this family the truth. I could feel the walls closing in the room, spinning as their faces blurred together, anger, hurt, betrayal. My phone buzzed on the table, a notification from the investment app flashing again, mocking me with its cold, bright numbers. $28 million. Kayla's eyes darted to the screen, then back to me, and something in her snapped. She reached forward, snatching the phone off the table before I could react, holding it up for everyone to see. Look, she screamed, turning the screen toward Mom and Dad. Look at what your perfect daughter's been hiding. Dad's face turned to stone, his eyes darkening as he stared at the screen. Mom sobbed harder, shaking her head, whispering, Emma, no, please tell me this isn't true. Mark's hand fell away from me, his eyes filled with a hurt I couldn't bear to see. It's not what you think, I tried to say, but the words felt empty, falling flat in the heavy air. Kayla's breathing was ragged, her hands trembling as she clutched the phone. Where did you get this money, Emma? She demanded, her voice lowering to a dangerous whisper. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, Kayla's voice rose again, sharp and clear, slicing through the room. Did you steal it, Emma? Is that how you got this money? The room exploded in noise. Mom's cries, Dad's curses, Liam's low whistle, Mark's shocked exhale. I stood frozen, the world around me spinning, the air thick and choking. Kayla's eyes locked on mine, burning with betrayal and rage, and I knew there was no going back. I stepped back, my hand reaching for the counter to steady myself, the glass of wine forgotten, red liquid dripping onto the floor. Kayla lifted the phone higher, her voice shaking but loud, clear, final. Tell us, Emma. Tell us where you got $28 million. I stood frozen, the words echoing in my head, louder than Kayla's screams, louder than Mom's sobs. Dad's face went pale, the lines around his mouth deepening as he stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. Mom's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes red and wet, her breath coming in sharp, uneven gasps. Mark looked at me, hurt and confusion twisting across his face, his jaw tightening as he stepped back like he didn't know whether to reach for me or run. Kayla's hand was shaking, still clutching my phone, the screen bright between us, the number glaring like a wound I couldn't hide. "Kayla, give me back my phone," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as my heart pounded against my ribs. She let out a sharp, broken laugh, wiping at her tears with the back of her hand. "Number. Not until you tell us what this is, Emma." Her eyes were wild, glassy, anger and desperation tangled together, her chest rising and falling in quick, shallow breaths. "It's not what you think," I said, reaching for the phone, but she jerked back, holding it out of my reach. "Oh really?" Kayla snapped, her voice cracking. "Because it looks like you've been hiding millions while I'm out here drowning in debt." Mom let out a sob, turning to Dad. "George, what is happening?" Dad shook his head, his eyes never leaving mine, his voice low, steady, but I could hear the tremor underneath. "Emma, just tell us the truth." Mark's voice cut in, quiet but firm. "Emma, please. We deserve to know." Liam leaned forward, his elbows on the table, phone in hand, recording everything, his mouth curling into a small, satisfied smirk. "You're filming this?" I snapped, my eyes darting to him. He shrugged, not even trying to hide it. "People need to know the truth, Emma." My hands curled into fists at my sides as I tried to breathe, the air thick and hot, the walls closing in. "It's my money," I said, finally, my voice low but clear. Kayla's eyes narrowed, her lips pulling back in a humorless smile. "Your money? That's your explanation?" "Yes," I said, lifting my chin, forcing myself to meet her gaze. "It's my money and it's legal." "Legal?" Kayla barked out a laugh, shaking her head as tears spilled down her face again. "You expect us to believe that? You who's been living like some saint, working at that nonprofit, telling us you can barely afford repairs on your car." "It's complicated," I said, my voice tightening. "Make it simple then," Kayla screamed, stepping closer, shoving the phone toward my face. "Explain to me how you got this money while I'm getting eviction notices, while Mom and Dad are worried about bills, while you sit there pretending you're just like the rest of us." Mom was crying now, leaning into Dad's shoulder, her shoulders shaking with each breath. Dad's hand was on her back, but his eyes were on me, hard, waiting. Mark stepped closer, but there was distance in his eyes, a hesitation I had never seen before. "Emma, if it's legal, just tell us." I swallowed, my mouth dry, the words sticking in my throat. I could see the hurt on their faces, the confusion, the betrayal, and it made my stomach twist. 3 years ago, I won a settlement from a harassment lawsuit at work. I said, finally, my voice low, each word heavy. "And the rest. I invested. I made the right moves. Crypto stocks, early startup shares. It grew." Kayla's mouth fell open, her eyes wide, disbelief flashing across her face. "You made millions on crypto, and you didn't tell us." "I didn't have to tell you," I said, my voice cold, the years of holding it in pouring out. "I didn't owe you that." Kayla's face twisted, her shoulders shaking as she let out a sob, then another harsh laugh. "So you just let me suffer, you let me beg Mom and Dad for help while you had this. It's not my job to save you from your messes." I snapped, the words sharp, cutting. Liam's phone beeped again, as he kept recording, the small red light blinking like a warning. Mom lifted her head, her eyes puffy and red, her voice shaking. "Emma, please. Kayla is your sister." I looked at her, at Dad, at Mark, at Kayla, who was glaring at me, tears streaking down her face, her hands trembling. "You don't understand," I said, my voice breaking, but no one moved, no one spoke, the silence heavy and cold. And for the first time I realized I was alone in this room, surrounded by people I loved who suddenly looked at me like I was the enemy. Mom's sobs filled the room, her face buried in Dad's shoulder as he held her, but his eyes stayed on me, hard and questioning. Kayla's breathing was ragged, her eyes red and wild as she clutched my phone, shaking it like proof of every lie she thought I'd told. "You think you're better than us," she spat, voice trembling. "Sitting there with your perfect life while I can't pay my rent." Liam's phone was still recording, the blinking red light catching the corner of my eye, making the anger boil in my chest. "Turn that off, Liam," I snapped, my voice low. He raised an eyebrow, smirking as he tilted the camera toward me. "Why would I? People love the truth." Kayla let out a broken laugh, wiping her tears roughly with the back of her hand. "Yeah, Emma. Why don't you tell the truth for once? I have told the truth, I shot back, my voice rising before I forced it down. That money is mine. I earned it. I paid taxes on it. I didn't steal anything. Kayla's face twisted with rage and hurt. You let me suffer, Emma. You let me beg Mom and Dad for help while you had this. It's not my responsibility to fix your choices, I yelled, the words sharp cutting through the air. Mom flinched, looking up with swollen, tear-streaked eyes. Emma, please. She's your sister. Kayla's eyes met mine, cold and wet, her jaw trembling. Sister. You're no sister of mine if you can watch me drown while you swim in millions. I wasn't swimming in millions, Kayla, my voice cracked, breath catching. I didn't even touch most of it. I didn't want to be used, and I didn't want to be forced into a life I didn't choose. Dad cleared his throat, his voice low but steady. Emma, we could have helped you handle it. You didn't have to hide. I shook my head, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. You don't get it. You don't know how people look at you when they know you have money. Everyone wants a piece of you. Everyone feels entitled. Kayla let out another harsh laugh, shaking her head. You're unbelievable. Liam shifted in his seat, the camera still on me. You know you're making yourself look worse, Emma. Shut up, Liam, I snapped, glaring at him. Mark stepped forward, his face, pale eyes filled with something that looked like fear. Emma, is this really true? You've had this money for 3 years. I swallowed, looking at him, the man I loved, the man who was supposed to know me better than anyone. Yes, I whispered, my voice small. And I didn't tell anyone because I was afraid. Afraid of what? Mark asked, his voice tight. Of this, I said, gesturing around the room. Afraid that it would change everything. Kayla's lips twisted into a bitter smile. Well, guess what, sis? It has. I felt the weight of their eyes on me, heavy and suffocating, pressing into my chest until it hurt to breathe. You're selfish, Kayla said, her voice shaking. You're a liar. No, I said, shaking my head, tears sliding down my cheeks. I'm not. She took a step closer, holding up the phone, her eyes burning into mine. You owe me, Emma. You owe this family. I don't owe you anything, I whispered, my hands shaking. Kayla's eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to a dangerous, cold whisper. If you don't give me half, I'll make sure everyone knows you're a thief. The room went silent. The only sound was Mom's quiet sobs and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Dad closed his eyes, rubbing his hand over his face, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Mark stepped back, looking at me like he didn't recognize me, his hands falling to his sides. Kayla's eyes locked on mine, a mix of triumph and desperation. Her breath coming in sharp, angry gasps as she waited for my answer. I could see Kayla's finger hovering over her phone screen, her eyes daring me to stop her. Kayla, don't, I said, my voice low, shaking as I tried to keep it calm. She tilted her head, her wet hair sticking to her cheeks, a bitter smile pulling at her lips. You had your chance, Emma. Before I could move, she tapped the screen. The faint whoosh of the upload was louder than any scream. Mom let out a sharp cry, clutching Dad's arm, while Dad's face went blank, his eyes unfocused like he was trying to wake up from a nightmare. Kayla, what did you do? I demanded, my voice cracking as I reached for her phone. She jerked away, holding it to her chest. The world deserves to know, Emma. I'm done keeping your secrets. Liam's phone beeped again, the notification lighting up as he glanced down, smirking. It's already getting views. I felt my knees weaken, grabbing the back of the chair to steady myself as my phone buzzed on the table. Another buzz. Another. The screen lit up with notifications, the flashing lights blurring through tears I couldn't hold back. Mom's phone rang, the shrill sound cutting through the silence before she answered with a shaking voice. Hello, no, I don't know. Please, her voice broke and she handed the phone to Dad, her hand covering her mouth as she started to sob. Dad spoke softly into the phone, trying to calm whoever was on the other end, his eyes glancing at me, disappointment and fear mixing together, making my stomach twist. I grabbed my phone, seeing Kayla's post plastered across Facebook. My name, my photo, my bank balance, her words screaming from the screen. My sister stole millions and lied to our family. Hundreds of likes, comments pouring in, people I hadn't seen in years, tagging others, adding fuel to the fire. My vision blurred as I scrolled, seeing words like thief, liar, selfish flashing back at me. Why would you do this, Kayla? I whispered, my voice breaking, but she just looked at me, eyes empty, shaking her head. You did this, she said, her voice cold. You could have helped me. The sound of a car outside pulled my attention, headlights washing over the living room window before fading. My phone buzzed again, this time with an email from work. Subject: urgent, immediate response required. I opened it, my hands, trembling eyes scanning the words. Emma, we have been made aware of allegations against you regarding financial misconduct. Please report to HR tomorrow morning with documentation to clarify this matter. Pending investigation, you are suspended effective immediately. The words swam before my eyes, bile rising in my throat. My job, the one place I felt safe, was gone in an instant. Dad's voice was quiet but firm. Emma, you need to fix this. Mom was crying again, her voice high and thin. Emma, please just give Kayla what she needs. We can't survive this. The neighbors are calling, people are talking. I can't just give away half of everything, I said, my voice small, tears slipping down my cheeks. Why not? Kayla snapped, her face twisted with anger. You don't deserve it if you can't help your own family. I looked at Dad, hoping for something, anything, but he shook his head, looking so tired. Emma, sometimes keeping the family together means making sacrifices. My phone buzzed again, another notification, another comment calling me a fraud, another email demanding answers, another piece of me breaking. I looked around the room, seeing the people I loved turn into strangers, their faces blurred through tears, their voices demanding things I couldn't give. And for the first time I felt something inside me crack, the weight of their demands pressing down until I couldn't breathe. I pressed a hand against my chest, trying to force air back into my lungs, as Mom's phone buzzed again on the table. She answered, her voice shaking. No, I don't know why she would do this. Please, we're trying to handle it. Dad took the phone from her, his jaw tight, speaking calmly to whoever was calling, but his eyes flicked toward me, sharp, like he was assessing damage control. Kayla was pacing, scrolling through her phone, the glow lighting up her angry, tear-streaked face. It's blowing up, Emma. Everyone's sharing it. Maybe now you'll do the right thing. Kayla, you don't know what you've done, I said, my voice hoarse, the words scraping my throat. Oh, I know exactly what I've done, she snapped, not looking up. I'm saving myself since you wouldn't. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up with shaking hands, seeing an email from HR. My stomach dropped as I read. We have received serious allegations regarding financial misconduct. You are suspended effective immediately pending a full investigation. I dropped the phone, the clatter loud in the tense room. Mom let out a choked sob, turning to me with desperate eyes. Emma, just help your sister. Please, baby, if you just pay off her debts, we can fix this. I can't, Mom, I whispered, my hands trembling. It doesn't work like that. Dad's face was pale, his eyes hollow. Emma, sometimes you have to sacrifice to keep the family together. I shook my head, tears spilling down my cheeks. Dad, it's not that simple. It is that simple, Kayla shouted, stepping closer, holding her phone like a weapon. You have the money, we need it. It's that simple. The room felt smaller, the air heavy, pressing down until I thought I would collapse under it. My phone buzzed again, another email, this time from the IRS. Request for immediate documentation regarding reported assets and income. My vision blurred as I read the words, the letters swimming in front of me, the weight of every choice I had made crashing down. Liam's voice cut through the silence, casual, almost amused. Wow, the IRS too. You really pissed off the wrong people, Emma. Shut up, Liam, I screamed, the words ripping out of me. He raised his hands in mock surrender, smirking. Just saying. Kayla was still scrolling, her eyes sharp and cold. You're losing everything, Emma. Because you're selfish. I'm not selfish, I choked out, pressing a hand to my forehead. I worked for that money. I earned it. Then prove it, Kayla yelled. Show us everything, or give me half, or, I swear. Mom grabbed her arm, tears running down her face. Please, Emma, don't let this destroy us. Pay her debts, keep the family safe. I backed away, shaking my head, the walls closing in, my own mother looking at me like I was a bank, not her daughter. Dad sighed, the sound heavy. Emma, maybe it's time to do what's right. I felt something inside me break as I looked at them, the people I had spent my whole life protecting, loving, trying to make proud. And now they were looking at me like I was nothing more than a paycheck. A knock on the door made me jump, the sharp sound slicing through the room. Kayla wiped her face, smirking. Looks like the circus is here. Dad opened the door and Mark stood there, his hair damp from the rain, his eyes hard, unreadable. Emma, he said, his voice low, cold, a stranger's voice. We need to talk. He stepped inside, shutting the door behind him, his eyes locking onto mine. You need to tell me the truth, he said, his jaw clenching. Where did you get that money, Emma? I opened my mouth, but the words stuck, the silence heavy between us. Mark's eyes were cold, his jaw tight, his hands clenching and unclenching at his sides. He looked like he was ready to run, like he was ready to leave. I told you, I managed, my voice barely a whisper. It's my money, Mark. I earned it. Earned it how, Emma? He snapped, stepping closer, his voice low but sharp. Because right now it looks like you've been hiding millions. It looks like you've been lying to everyone, including me. I wasn't lying, I said, tears stinging my eyes. I was protecting myself. From what he demanded, his eyes narrowing. From your family, from me, I shook my head, my breath catching. You don't understand, Mark. Then, help me understand, he said, his voice breaking for just a moment before he forced it steady again. Because the woman I love wouldn't lie to me like this. I stepped back, the distance between us feeling like a canyon. It's complicated. He let out a humorless laugh, shaking his head. That's what everyone says before they get caught. I flinched, pressing a hand to my chest. Don't say that. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing in front of me, his eyes filled with something like fear, something like betrayal. Emma, the company is involved now. People are asking questions. They're asking me questions, he said, his voice tight. Do you know what that means for me? I swallowed, the guilt heavy in my stomach. I didn't mean for this to happen. But it did, he shot back, stopping to look at me. And now I'm stuck in the middle of it. Mark, please, I whispered, reaching for him, but he stepped back. I don't even know who you are right now, he said, his voice low. I pulled my hand back, my fingers curling into a fist. You know me. He shook his head, tears in his eyes that he refused to let fall. I thought I did. Mark, please don't do this, I pleaded, my voice cracking. He looked at me, his eyes empty, his shoulders sagging as if the weight of us was too much to carry. I can't be here, Emma, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I can't trust you. And just like that, he turned and walked out the door, closing softly behind him, the quiet louder than any slam. I sank to the floor, the cold seeping into my bones as I wrapped my arms around my knees, the tears falling freely now, the sobs tearing through me. I didn't know how long I sat there, the darkness of the apartment swallowing me, the silence pressing down until it felt like it would crush me. My phone buzzed on the floor, the screen lighting up in the darkness. An email from the company, the subject line clear, indefinite suspension pending investigation. Another buzz, this time a notification from the IRS demanding documentation, demanding answers. The phone buzzed again, Mom's name flashing on the screen. I didn't answer. It buzzed again, a text from Kayla. 1 million and I'll take the post down. I let out a broken laugh, dropping the phone, the screen going dark as it fell against the floor. I pressed my forehead against my knees, my body shaking as I tried to catch my breath, the memories flooding back. Kayla begging for money years ago, saying she was sick, saying she needed help, the loans she took, and never repaid, the chaos she brought into every room she entered. I closed my eyes, the darkness behind them safer than the darkness around me. I would not let her drag me down again. I lifted my head, the quiet of the apartment pressing against my ears, every tick of the clock like a hammer. The shadows on the walls felt longer, the dark corners of the room swallowing every breath I tried to take. My phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with Mom's name. I let it ring, the sound sharp in the silence, until it stopped. It rang again and again until I grabbed it, pressing it to my ear, my voice rough. Mom, stop. Her breath was shaky, her words tumbling out in a rush. Emma, please just give Kayla the money. She said she'll take everything down if you help her. I closed my eyes, my fingers tightening around the phone. Mom, I can't. You can, she said, her voice rising. You have the money. This is tearing us apart. I pressed a hand against my forehead, trying to steady the shaking in my chest. Kayla is doing this, not me. She's your sister, Mom whispered, and I could hear the tears in her voice. Family takes care of each other. She lied before I said, my voice flat, memories flooding in. Kayla in the hospital, pale, crying, saying she needed money for treatment, for rent, for food. The calls from creditors, the frantic requests, the tears that dried up the moment she got what she wanted. And then the parties, the shopping bags, the photos she posted, laughing, living, while I worked late nights to cover the damage. She's lying now, I said, my voice firmer. She wants to drag me down with her. Mom's breath hitched the silence on the line, stretching before she spoke again, her voice cold. If you won't help her, don't expect us to stand by you. The line went dead. I stared at the phone, the screen dark, the emptiness in my chest spreading until it felt like I couldn't breathe. A notification popped up, Kayla's name lighting up the screen. 1 million. That's all. I'll take it down. I let out a dry, bitter laugh, tossing the phone onto the couch, watching it bounce against the cushion. I pushed myself off the floor, my legs unsteady, moving through the dark apartment until I reached the bathroom. I flipped on the light, the brightness harsh against my swollen eyes, my tear-streaked face staring back at me in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman looking back. Her eyes were hollow, her shoulders slumped, her hair falling around her face like a curtain. For a moment, I saw the girl I used to be. The one who believed family would protect her, who thought love was enough, who believed in loyalty no matter the cost. That girl was gone. I leaned forward, placing my hands on the cold sink, the porcelain grounding me as I stared into my own eyes. I won't let you do this to me, I whispered, the words shaking but strong. The reflection stared back, and for the first time in days I saw steel in my own eyes. I won't let you ruin me. I said again, louder this time, my voice echoing against the walls. I stood up straighter, brushing the tears off my cheeks, my breath steadying as I felt resolve tighten in my chest. I was done begging for their love. I was done trying to fix their mistakes. I would fight for what I built, even if it meant fighting alone. I looked at myself in the mirror, holding my own gaze. I will fight, I whispered. I will not let them destroy me. I pulled my hair back into a tight ponytail, wiping the last tears from my face before grabbing my laptop. The screen glowed in the dark room as I opened folders, pulling every tax return, investment report, and legal document I had collected over the past 3 years. My hands trembled, but I kept going, scanning files, renaming them, organizing them by year, by asset, by transaction. My phone buzzed again, Kayla's messages piling up, demanding, threatening, begging, all in the same breath. I silenced it, focusing on the task in front of me. When the clock struck 7 a.m., I called Ethan Carter, the lawyer recommended by one of the few friends I had left. His voice was calm, steady, cutting through the chaos that had taken over my life. Emma, we're going to fight this, he said. Send me everything. I emailed the folders, watching the progress bar crawl across the screen, my chest tight as I hit send. Minutes later, my phone rang, Ethan's voice clear. You've done everything right, Emma. You've paid your taxes, your investments are clean, and you have the documentation to prove it. Tears stung my eyes again, but this time it was relief. So what happens now? Now we prepare to protect you, he said. But Emma, you cannot give them any money. It will look like hush money and it will hurt your case. I wasn't going to, I whispered, clutching the phone. Good, Ethan replied. We'll file for a protective order to stop your sister from spreading false information. If she continues, we will pursue a defamation lawsuit. The weight on my shoulders shifted, not gone, but moved into something I could carry. My email pinged again, a new message from HR. Effective immediately, your suspension is extended pending a financial audit. I forwarded the email to Ethan. They're digging into everything. Let them, he said. We have nothing to hide. The words gave me something to hold on to, something to steady my shaking hands. An hour later, another email arrived, this one, anonymous, linking to a local news blog. Nonprofit worker hiding millions. Is Emma Reed a fraud? My stomach turned as I scrolled, seeing comments, shares, people dissecting my life without knowing a thing about me. Liam, I whispered, my jaw clenching. Ethan's reply came fast. Do not respond publicly. Let me handle this. Mom called again, her voice cracking as she cried into the phone. Emma, please, Kayla is saying she'll go to jail if you don't help her. I closed my eyes, swallowing hard. Mom, I can't. Please baby, just pay her debts, she sobbed. We can't handle this. She's doing this to herself, I said, my voice low even as it shattered something inside me. Don't you love your sister? Mom whispered. I do, I said, tears rolling down my cheeks, but I love myself too. Mom hung up without another word. I stood there alone in the silence, my phone buzzing again. Another message from Kayla, this time, a text, the words short and sharp. 1 million. That's all I want. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded it to Ethan. Use this, I wrote. Minutes later, Ethan called. Emma, it's time. We're filing the defamation suit. She's left us no choice. I nodded, the fear mixing with something else, something steady. Do it, I said. Ethan's voice was calm, steady as always. I'll handle the paperwork today. We'll file first thing in the morning. I closed my laptop, exhaling as the room settled into quiet, the weight of the decision sinking in. My phone buzzed again, a new email from HR requesting my presence for a financial audit next week. Attached was a list of documents they needed, some of which I had already sent, others I would need to pull together. I forwarded the email to Ethan, typing, adding to your pile. His reply was instant. Good. We want transparency. The apartment felt smaller than usual, the ticking clock echoing against the walls, reminding me that time was moving whether I was ready or not. A message from Kayla popped up on my screen. You're ruining everything. I stared at the words, my jaw tightening as I typed back. No, Kayla. You did this. The typing bubbles appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared before another message came through. If you don't drop this, I'll go to jail. Is that what you want? I didn't respond. Instead, I silenced the notifications and tossed the phone onto the couch, standing in the middle of the room, letting the silence wrap around me like armor. My eyes landed on the stack of folders and receipts on the coffee table. I moved to the table, sorting each paper, labeling envelopes, cross-referencing transaction logs and tax statements, each step steady, mechanical, focused. Ethan called again just before noon. We've filed for an injunction to stop Kayla from posting or sharing anything further. If she does, she will be in contempt of court. Will this stop her? I asked, my voice flat. It will slow her down, he said. And if she pushes further, it will strengthen your case. A knock at the door startled me, echoing through the apartment. I checked the peephole, expecting another neighbor with questions, but it was the mail carrier. I signed for a letter, the official IRS seal on the envelope, making my stomach twist. I ripped it open, scanning the contents. It was a summons for an in-person audit requiring me to appear with full documentation within 10 days. I sat down, clutching the letter, letting the fear rise for a moment before I forced it back down. This was just another step, another battle, and I wasn't going to run. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I answered, bracing myself. Her voice was already breaking. Emma, please just stop this. She's your sister. She's saying she'll go to jail, that she can't handle this. Mom, she brought this on herself, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She's your family, Mom sobbed. Please, just pay her something to end this. I closed my eyes, letting the tears slip down my cheeks. I can't, Mom. There was silence, heavy, before she whispered, I don't know who you are anymore. The call ended. I dropped the phone, pressing my palms to my eyes, letting the darkness fill my vision as the world pressed in. The apartment was quiet again, the clock ticking, the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. And then my phone rang again. I grabbed it, seeing Kayla's name, her picture smiling back at me from better days. I answered, my voice low. What do you want? Her voice was ragged, breaking, filled with tears and panic. You're killing me, Emma. You're really going to let me go to jail? You don't love me anymore. I held the phone to my ear, listening to her sob, her breath catching, her words falling apart. Kayla, I didn't do this to you, I said quietly, my voice calm. You did this to yourself. She let out a broken cry, and for a moment I almost saw us as children again, hiding under blankets, whispering secrets, promising we'd always be there for each other. You don't love me, she whispered, her voice so small I almost didn't hear it. I do love you, I said, my throat tightening. But I won't let you ruin my life. The line went silent before she hung up, the emptiness in the room pressing in as I set the phone down. 2 weeks later, I stood outside the courthouse, the morning air sharp against my skin. Ethan beside me, calm and steady as always. "Today is just the first step," he said, adjusting his tie. "But you're ready." I nodded, clutching the folder in my hands, every document, every receipt, every truth I had carried alone for so long. We walked through the metal detectors, past the cold marble halls, into the courtroom where Kayla sat with her lawyer, her eyes red, her hair pulled back, her hands shaking as she clutched a tissue. Mom sat beside her, her face pale, tears already spilling as she looked at me. Dad kept his eyes on the floor, his hands twisting in his lap. The judge entered the room, rising before settling back into tense silence. Kayla's lawyer started painting her as a victim, telling the court I had promised her help, that I had turned my back, that I had betrayed family. Kayla wiped her tears, glancing around the room, her voice breaking as she spoke. "She promised to help me. I was drowning in debt, and she said she would help." I kept my eyes on her, letting her words fall, letting the silence speak louder than any interruption. Ethan stood, his voice even as he laid out the truth. He submitted the screenshots of Kayla's messages, her demands for money, her threats to ruin me if I didn't comply. He played the recordings of her calls, her voice sharp, demanding, promising to make me pay. He brought up the video Liam had posted, playing it frame by frame, showing how Kayla had angled the camera, how she had positioned herself, how she had created the scene to look like a confrontation, not a planned performance. The judge listened, her eyes sharp, taking in every word. Then Ethan handed over the documents from the IRS, the letter confirming that my funds were legal, my taxes filed, my investments clean. An email from my company was read aloud, stating they had completed their internal audit and found no wrongdoing, lifting my suspension effective immediately. I let out a breath. I hadn't realized I was holding the weight in my chest, easing as Ethan continued. Kayla's face changed as each piece of evidence was presented, her eyes darting around the room, her fingers pulling at the tissue in her hands until it shredded. Finally, the judge turned to Kayla, her voice calm but firm. "Is there anything you wish to add?" Kayla's eyes filled with tears again, her lip trembling. I just wanted a part of it. I needed help." The courtroom went silent, the words hanging heavy in the air, the truth finally exposed under the harsh lights. Mom let out a soft cry, covering her face, while Dad closed his eyes, shaking his head. I looked at Kayla, really looked at her, seeing the sister I had once loved, now a stranger sitting across from me. She shifted in her seat, her fingers twisting the shredded tissue in her lap, her eyes darting between me, the judge, and the quiet courtroom where every breath felt loud. The judge's gavel tapped softly. "Miss Kayla Reed, do you wish to clarify your last statement?" Kayla's lips parted, her voice trembling as she tried to regain her composure. I just meant I needed help. I thought Emma would help me. She promised she would always protect me." The judge's gaze was steady. "Your statements under oath matter, Miss Reed. Are you confirming you fabricated claims to coerce funds from your sister?" Kayla's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her lawyer leaned in, whispering frantically, but Kayla's eyes locked on me instead, wide and desperate. Mom sobbed softly beside her, clutching her purse to her chest, her wedding ring glinting as her hands shook. Dad sat beside her, staring at the floor, the lines on his face deeper than I remembered, his shoulders heavy with the weight of everything unspoken. Ethan rose, his voice clear. "Your Honor, we have provided evidence of harassment, threats, and defamation against my client. We request a ruling to cease all further defamation immediately and to preserve the right to pursue damages." The judge nodded, flipping through the documents. "The evidence is clear. Miss Emma Reed's finances are lawful, her taxes filed, and her income legitimate. The protective order is granted, effective immediately." A wave of relief washed over me, but it was hollow, empty, leaving behind a quiet ache in my chest. Kayla's breathing grew rapid, her face red, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You're destroying me, Emma," she whispered loud enough for only us to hear. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The bailiff stepped forward, handing paperwork to Kayla's lawyer outlining the terms of the order. Kayla's lawyer tried to speak with her, but she jerked her arm away, shaking her head, eyes never leaving mine. For a moment the courtroom was silent, the air thick, heavy with the weight of every lie, every plea, every moment that had led us here. Then Kayla stood up so fast the chair scraped against the floor, making Mom flinch. Kayla's voice cracked as she pointed at me, her hand shaking. You think you're so perfect, Emma. You think you're better than all of us because you have money now. My jaw tightened, but I stayed silent, meeting her glare without flinching. She took a step closer before her lawyer held her back, her voice rising. You've always wanted to be above us, but you're nothing without this family. The judge cleared her throat sharp, pulling the room back to order. Miss Reed, control yourself. Kayla's chest heaved, her eyes wild. You killed this family, Emma. The words hung in the air, sharp and final. Mom's sobs turned into a low moan, her head falling into her hands while Dad closed his eyes, a tear slipping down his cheek before he quickly wiped it away. I stood still, my breath steady, feeling the last ties that had bound us as sisters snap one by one. Ethan placed a hand on my shoulder, steady and calm. It's over, he whispered. But as I looked at Kayla, at the hate and betrayal in her eyes, I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. She turned away from me, her shoulders shaking as she wiped tears from her face, but I didn't move to comfort her. I left the courtroom without looking back, stepping into the cold air, letting it fill my lungs, letting it remind me I was still here, still standing. In the days after the ruling whispers traveled faster than the winter wind through town, people who had once praised Kayla's bright smile now crossed the street when they saw her coming. Old friends blocked her number, ignoring her desperate texts asking for help. I heard through a neighbor that Kayla lost her part-time job after her boss read the local news. They couldn't risk her drama driving away customers. Liam disappeared 2 days later, leaving her alone in the apartment they shared, taking the last of his things while she was out begging our parents for rent money. I saw her once standing on the sidewalk outside Mom and Dad's house, her hair unwashed, her eyes puffy, her arms wrapped around herself as she argued with Dad on the porch. I have nothing, Dad, she yelled, her voice cracking, echoing down the quiet street. Dad didn't raise his voice, just stood there with tired eyes and a shaking head before he turned and walked back inside, closing the door softly behind him. That night, Mom called me. I let it ring twice before answering, bracing myself. Emma, she said, her voice raw from crying. Your sister. She's falling apart. I closed my eyes, sitting down on the edge of my bed. I know. She's sick, Emma. She needs help. I can't help her, I whispered, swallowing the tightness in my throat. She's your sister, Mom said, her words breaking. She's my baby. I know, I said again, softer, but I didn't offer anything more. After a moment, Mom hung up, the quiet in the room settling heavy around me. The next morning, I received an email from my company. HR and Rodriguez offered me my position back with assurances that the investigation cleared me completely. They said they'd welcome me back anytime, ready to restore trust. I stared at the email, reading it twice, then a third time before closing my laptop and pushing it away. They wanted me back, but I couldn't walk into that building again, couldn't pretend nothing had changed. Because everything had. At night, I lay awake listening to the wind rattle the old windows, the hum of the heater filling the silence. I started packing in the dark, folding clothes, pulling books from shelves, boxing up pieces of a life that no longer fit. The family photos came last. I held them under the small lamp, looking at the bright smiles, the matching dresses, Kayla's arms slung around my shoulder as we laughed, frozen in moments that felt like they belonged to strangers. I placed them gently in a box, sealing it shut before I changed my mind. I wasn't sure where I would go yet, but I knew I couldn't stay here, couldn't keep pretending I could save them. I taped a note to the kitchen table before I left, the words clear in the quiet of the dark house. I'm sorry, but I can't save everyone if I have to drown with you. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence wrap around me, the hum of the refrigerator, the only sound in the small kitchen. My bag was by the door, packed with what I needed the rest of my life, condensed into a few boxes I would leave in storage. I glanced around the house, the pictures on the walls, the worn couch where Kayla and I used to watch movies, the dent on the doorframe from when we raced down the hall as kids. It all felt so small now. My phone buzzed, lighting up with Mom's name. I let it ring, then silenced it, sliding it into my pocket as I took a deep breath. I stepped outside, the cold air biting at my skin, the streetlights casting long shadows across the empty street. I could see the lights on in Mom and Dad's house down the block, a soft glow in the window where Mom sat waiting, hoping I would walk back and say I could fix this. But I couldn't. I got into my car, closing the door softly, the sound of it sealing the decision I had made. As I started the engine, my headlights caught a figure standing at the edge of the yard. Dad. He stood there in his flannel jacket, his hands in his pockets, his eyes on me, the weight of everything unspoken between us hanging heavy in the cold night. I rolled down the window, the cold rushing in. Dad, I said, my voice catching. He took a step closer, stopping just short of the car, his eyes tired, sad, but clear. I'm sorry, Emma. I gripped the steering wheel, swallowing hard. I know. He looked down, shaking his head. I should have protected you. I should have protected both of you. It's not your fault, I said quietly. He looked back up, his eyes shining. I'm proud of you, you know. For standing up for yourself. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away. I love you, Dad. I love you too, kiddo, he said, his voice breaking. For a moment we just looked at each other, the cold air between us filled with every memory, every moment we could never get back. Then I put the car in drive, pulling away slowly, watching him in the rearview mirror until he was just a shadow in the dark. I drove through the quiet streets, past the park where Kayla and I used to play, past the coffee shop where I had spent early mornings studying for college, past the courthouse where everything had shattered. The town felt smaller as I left, like it had been shrinking around me for years, waiting for me to finally let it go. At the edge of town, I pulled over, stepping out of the car to take one last look. The wind was cold, sharp against my skin, carrying with it the scent of pine and the promise of rain. I closed my eyes, letting the wind wash over me, letting it take the last pieces of the girl who had once believed she could save everyone. When I opened them, I felt lighter. I got back into the car, starting the engine, the headlights cutting through the darkness as I pulled back onto the road. As I drove away, my phone buzzed again, lighting up with a single message from Kayla. Please don't leave. I stared at the screen, the words blurring as tears finally fell. But I didn't stop. I didn't turn back. Because I couldn't save her. And for the first time, I finally understood that I didn't have to. The road opened in front of me as I drove, the rain softening into mist, headlights slicing through the dawn. I crossed into Washington just as the sky turned a pale, forgiving blue, the clouds parting to reveal the first hints of sunrise. My phone buzzed in the cup holder, but I didn't look at it, letting it ring until it fell silent again. I pulled into Seattle by noon, the skyline rising gray and steel and alive, so different from the small town streets I had left behind. The apartment was small, tucked above a bakery that smelled like fresh bread each morning, the creak of the stairs, a reminder that I was in a place where no one knew me, where no one expected anything from me. I unpacked in silence, folding clothes into drawers, lining up books on a shelf, hanging a single photo of the ocean I had taken on a road trip years ago. It was the first time in months I felt like I could breathe. That night I stood by the window with a cup of tea, watching the lights of the city flicker, the glow of traffic below a steady hum. I thought of Kayla, of her tears, her rage, the sharpness of her words as she screamed at me in court. I thought of Mom, her voice breaking on the phone, begging me to save a family that had already been broken long before I stopped trying to hold it together. I thought of Dad standing under the porch light, his eyes sad but proud as he let me go. And I let them all go, piece by piece, until the silence in the room felt like peace, not punishment. The next morning, I started my new job at a small nonprofit, a place where the women who walked through the doors weren't looking for someone to save them, but for a place to save themselves. Alina greeted me with a warm smile, her hair pulled back, her eyes kind but sharp, a woman who had learned how to build a life on her own terms. She showed me to my small office with a desk by the window that overlooked the street, where people hurried to buses, where parents walked their kids to school, where life moved forward. You'll do good work here, she said, placing a hand on my shoulder before she left. I sat down, turning on the computer, the hum of the heater filling the space, the cursor blinking on the blank screen. I wasn't sure who I was yet in this new city, in this new life, but I was ready to find out. After work, I walked to the water, the air sharp against my cheeks, the sound of the waves, steady grounding. I pulled out my phone, seeing Mark's email notification pop up, his name bold on the screen. I read the first line, an apology I had once begged for, but now it felt small, too late. I deleted it without replying, slipping the phone back into my pocket, turning my face toward the breeze as it lifted my hair, cool and clean. I closed my eyes, letting the air fill my lungs, letting it clear out the last of the fear, the guilt, the shame I had carried for far too long. When I opened them again, the city lights were coming on one by one, reflecting on the water like stars. I turned and walked back toward my new home, each step steady, each breath a promise I was finally ready to keep for myself. I opened the door to my apartment, the warm scent of coffee and fresh bread from the bakery below drifting in as I stepped inside. I set my keys on the small table by the door, taking off my coat and hanging it on the hook, listening to the faint hum of the heater kicking on. The room felt alive with the soft glow of the lamp by the window, the stack of books on the coffee table, waiting for me to open them to fill the quiet with stories that had nothing to do with pain. I changed into a sweatshirt and jeans, pulling my hair into a loose ponytail before sitting down at my small desk, the laptop humming to life as I opened a new document. I began typing, letting the words come as they wanted, writing about the power of leaving, the strength it took to walk away, the way it felt to stand in the truth even when it hurt. Each word felt like a piece of my old life finally finding its place, no longer heavy, no longer a burden I needed to carry. The cursor blinked as I paused, looking out the window at the street below, people walking home with groceries, children skipping beside tired parents, the city alive in its small, ordinary moments. My phone buzzed, lighting up on the table with another email. Mark. I stared at the notification, the way his name still made something twist in my chest, a ghost of what once was. I opened it, reading the words carefully. I'm sorry, Emma. For everything. For not believing you. For not standing by you. I miss you. I closed the email, hovering for a moment before pressing delete. I leaned back in my chair, letting out a breath. I hadn't realized I was holding a small, quiet laugh breaking free as I wiped a tear from the corner of my eye. I didn't need him to believe in me anymore. I didn't need anyone to. I was enough. That evening, I walked down to the park by the water, sitting on a bench as the wind played with the loose strands of my hair, the sky streaked with pink and orange as the sun dipped below the horizon. I watched the waves ripple the lights of the city, reflecting off the water like tiny stars, the air cool and fresh, carrying the scent of rain. I pulled my sweater tighter around me, letting the calm sink into my bones, letting the noise of the past fall away with the breeze. A child's laughter echoed from the playground, and I smiled, letting it warm the quiet spaces inside me that were healing. Tomorrow, I would go back to work, help women who needed someone to stand beside them as they learned how to stand on their own. Tomorrow, I would write again, sharing the truth I had learned, offering it to those who were still too afraid to leave. But tonight, I simply sat there, letting the night fall around me, letting the peace settle, letting the promise of a new life bloom in the quiet. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this.